Good morning, students. Last class we have seen the formation of microsporogenesis and the formation of megasporogenesis, and how the pollen grains are formed, what are the layers, what are the shapes of the pollen grains, and how the pollen grain sits on the stigma, and through the pollen tube the male gametes, that is produced, two male gametes produced, that will enter into the ovary and fuses with the egg and the primary nucleus, and what are the things happening, that all these things we have seen in the last class. Now we'll go to the topic called pollination. What is pollination? Pollination is nothing but the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. What is that? Transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. That is called pollination. Why this pollination has to happen? If the pollination is not occurring, if that pollination is not happening, what will happen? What will happen? There will not be no seed or no fruit will be formed, and pollination is the seed and the food for many animals. This will be affected. So pollination, seed will not, if the pollination does not occur, no seed will be formed, no fruit will be formed. So pollination has to be carried out. After the pollen grains and the ovules are formed, the pollination is an important process. Only after this the fruit is produced. So what is pollination we have seen, and we should know what are the pollinations that is occurring. Some pollination might be direct pollination or indirect pollination. Here we should know the characteristic features of the gymnosperms and the angiosperms. In gymnosperms it is direct. Why it is direct? Because the ovules are exposed to the anthers. Okay, and whereas in angiosperms they are closed. Angiosperms it is closed, so it is indirect. Indirect means it is not sitting on the directly. So indirect in gymnosperms and indirect in angiosperms. That is the main division we have to see. Okay, and we have to see some more names, some more definitions. Chasmogamy and Clistogamy. Chasmogamy means the flower is open and the pollination occurs in the open flower. That is chasmogamy. In Clistogamy, Clisto means Greek word which means closed. The flower is closed and the pollination occurs inside the closed flower. That is Clistogamy. All these things, definitions we should know. And one more definition you should know. What is unisexuality and bisexuality, and what is monoecious and dioecious? Monoecious means, write the notes whenever I am taking class, children. Monoecious is nothing but the same plant will have both the male and the female flower. Okay, that is monoecious. And dioecious means the male and the female will be produced in the different plants. Okay, that is dioecious. Bisexuality means what? A same flower, single flower will have two sexes. It will be the male sex organ, the androecium, and the gynoecium will be present in the same flower. And unisexuality, different flowers. So all these four definitions you should remember. Monoecious. What is monoecious? Male and the female flowers are produced in the same plant. Male and the female flowers are produced in the different plant. Dioecious. So write the note whenever I take class. Okay, you're having the text notes in the rough note in the hand, write it directly. Okay, and so we have seen monoecious, dioecious, unisexuality and bisexuality, and also we have seen chasmogamy and Clistogamy, and what are the things in gymnosperms and angiosperms. Now we'll move to the definitions of the pollination also it is taken, and now we'll move to the different types of pollination. There are two major types of pollination. One is self-pollination, the other is the cross-pollination. What is that? The self-pollination, and other is the cross-pollination. What is self? Self means inside one flower itself, if the pollination occurs, it is self. When the pollination occurs between the different flowers, it might be the same plant or the different plant of the same species. So it is called cross-pollination. So if it occurs in the same flower, it is only one flower. It occurs means it is self-pollination. If it occurs between the two flowers, it is cross. Okay, multiplication. Think of multiplication. So only with two numbers we'll do multiplication. So that is cross-pollination. Cross. Okay, so self means within the same flower. Okay, and self-pollination, the other name for self-pollination is autogamy, right? As I tell you, auto means self, so autogamy, gamy means marriage, self means autogamy. Self-pollination is given the other name autogamy, and cross-pollination is given the other name allogamy. Now we'll go to the other subdivisions of the self-pollinations. We have got different types in the self-pollination. What are the characteristic features that to carry out self-pollination? I told you bisexual flower. What do you mean by bisexual flower? I explained you before going to the topic. What is bisexual? The same plant, both the sexes, androecium and the gynoecium, are present in the same flower. If that is happening in the plant, if that thing is having in the flower, it is called as self-pollination. It will carried out, the process that is carried out is self-pollination. Okay, and some other adaptation also they have to carry. That is known as Crosspollination. I told you Christo is nothing but the closed marriage. Okay, in Crosspollination, I have in the book it is given as an example, Commelina viola. In Commelina viola, the flower is closed all the time and the pollination occurs within the flower itself. No need to move from one flower to other flower. In the same flower, the process occurs, pollination occurs, and the fruit is produced. That is Crosspollination, which means closed marriage. And and in Commelina viola, this thing happens in the same species of the flower, Commelina bengalensis, we have got two types of flower. The same plant having one flower in the aerial and one in the submerged underground. What happens? The aerial flower is very attractive, so it attracts the pollinators to do pollination. Okay, the flower is open, and the flowers in the underground, they are closed and they're not attractive, less color, they're not colorful, so the flowers are closed. So here Crosspollination pollination occurs. Okay, now I think you will have understood. So this type of thing is known as self-pollination, and they are not dependent on the pollinators. Why? It is happening inside the same flower itself, so they are not dependent on the pollinators. Pollinators means what? Agents. Okay, so we have seen self-pollination. In self-pollination we have seen Crosspollination. We have seen two examples. One is Commelina viola and Commelina bengalensis. After that we'll go to the other examples. Next we'll move to homogamy. What is homogamy? Homo means where the stamens and the stigma, homo means same. First you should know the definitions, English literal definitions. Homo means same, where the stamen and the stigma are matured at the same time. The stamen and the stigma will mature. That is known as homogamy. And here only self-pollination occurs. In homogamy, only self-pollination occurs. In incomplete dichogamy, the opposite for homogamy is incomplete dichogamy, where the anthers and the stigma mature at different time. Homo same time, dichogamy different times. Okay, and different time. And now we'll move to cross-pollination. Cross-pollination means what? Your one flower and their one flower. If the pollination occurs between this and this flower, it is known as the two types of flower. Two flowers, it is known as cross-pollination. It might be the same plant or different plant, same species or different species. Okay, that is known as cross-pollination. Cross-pollination is nothing but transfer of pollen grains from the stigma, anthers to the stigma of another flower, not the same flower, another. This word you have to mention from another. If you mention same, it is self. So another flower, it is known as cross-pollination. So now here we have to see the definitions of the other subtypes. Dichogamy. What is dichogamy? Another flower of the same plant. What is the example I am going to give you is one plant is here. It is having right side one flower and left side one flower. If the pollination occurs between the right side flower and the left side flower, it is dichogamy. Okay, this is it happens only in the monoecious plant. What is monoecious? I told you in the first itself. So whenever I tell you, write the examples, then it will be clear for you to grasp. Okay, monoecious means both male and the female flowers are produced in the same plant. So here the right side plant is a male, left side plant is a female. Now the pollination occurs. That is known as Dichogamy. Xenogamy means one flower here and the other flower is the next house. So if the pollination occurs between this flower and the another flower of different plant of same species, for example, your friend is having hibiscus and you are having one hibiscus plant. If the pollination occurs between your hibiscus and your friend's hibiscus, it is known as xenogamy. See, they are of same species, same family, but the plants are different. Yes, one is grown in your home and that is grown in your friend's home. That is xenogamy. Xeno means think of your friend and you. And now what are the characteristic features that has to be adapted for cross-pollination? In cross-pollination, what are the outbreeding devices? First one is dichogamy. Dichogamy means it happens only in the unisexual flower. Unisexual means only one androecium or one reproductive organ is present. It might be either androecium or gynoecium. Only cross-pollination is possible. This is of two types. It might be the monoecious plant or dioecious plant. Again I am explaining monoecious. Male and the female flowers on the same plant. Example, coconut and bitter gourd. In dioecious, male and the female flowers are seen in the different plants. That is known as dioecious. Example, borassus and cassica. Date palm, and date palm is also another example. Autogamy and Dichogamy is prevented here, where in xenogamy autogamy will not happen because the plants are produced, the sex organs are in different flowers. Okay, so we have seen Dichogamy, monoecious and dioecious. Next we'll move to monocliny. What is mean by monocliny? The flowers are bisexual. Though they are bisexual, self-pollination will not occur. Chronic cross-pollination will occur because the structures are in the same, the plant features are in such a way this will not happen. Which will not happen? Self-pollination will not happen. Sometimes the androecium might be bigger or the ovary might be lower, or the ovary will be in a higher place and androecium will be in the lower place. That time the transfer will not occur. And dichogamy. Dichogamy means anther and the homogamy we have seen. Next is dichogamy. Anther and the stamen will mature at different time. In dichogamy, we have got two types. It might be the maturity of first androecium might mature or the gynoecium might mature. If the androecium is maturing first, it is called as protoandry. If the gynoecium is maturing first, it is known as protogyny. Okay, in dichogamy, two types. Write the notes. In dichogamy, two types. Androecium is maturing first, it is protoandry. Gynoecium is maturing first, it is protogyny. Then Heterogamy. Heterogamy means what? The stamens and the stigma, they are arranged in such a way that is impossible for self-pollination. So self-pollination will not at all occur. As I told you, in monocliny, they are arranged in such a way such that their self-pollination will not occur, only cross-pollination. And what are the things we will see later. Heterosly. Heterosly means plant produces two flowers. Okay, a plant produces two different flowers and they will have different length. One flower is of different and one flower is different, but the pollination occurs with a plant of same length. How is that possible? So okay, if the androecium or stigma is of 5 cm in one flower, it will cross with which flower has got the same 5 cm, it will grow and cross pollinate with that. That is heterosly. That is called as heterosly. This heterosly is again subdivided, divided into two types, disly and trisly. Okay, disly means that two flowers of there are two different types of flowers are seen in the plant. Okay, for example, pin or the long style, thumb-eyed or the short one. Okay, it might be long or the short. Okay, now the anthers of the thumb-eyed will pollinate with the pin of the stigma of the pin, or otherwise the stigma of the thumb pollinate with the anther of the pin. So okay, got it? anthers of the pin pollinate with the stigma of the thumb. Vice versa. Next, stigma of the pin pollinate with the anthers of the thumb. That is, what is that? Dichogamy. In trichogamy, 3 different types of flowers are produced. Okay, what is that? 3 different types of kinds of flowers are produced. One flower will pollinate with the other 2 types of flower. Okay, this one flower will pollinate with the other 2, not with the same kind, only with the other. Of the 2, this one will will pollinate with this 2, and this one will pollinate with this 2. Okay, so one flower will pollinate with the other 2. Example, agglutinon. In dichogamy, lythrum. Example is lythrum. So heterosly is again divided into dichogamy. Di means 2 different flowers, one anther with the other stigma, pin and the thumb. Keep that in the mind. And trichogamy, 3. Tri means 3. One flower with the other 2. So that's it about the types of pollination. Now we'll move to the agents. Who are the agents? Agents means the person, one who transfers, one who does the work. Here the pollination is done by different agents. So the name is also given in different forms. So we'll see that one by one. First one, if the pollination occurs by air or wind. If the pollination occurs by air or wind, it is called as anemophily. Anemophily. What will be the characteristic feature? If it is an anemophily, what will be the characteristic feature? That thing is the pollen grain should be of lightweight. It should be of feathery. Only if the pollen grains are lightweight, the wind or the air can carry it. Yes, you agree with that? Yes. That is the correct thing, because only if the pollen grains are lightweight, feathery, it is easy for the wind or air to travel. So that type of pollen grains, lightweight pollen grains, are carried by the anemophily, air or the wind. Next is hydrophily. Hydrophily means water is the agent. All the aquatic plants, the plants living inside the water, hydrophily pollination takes place. Zoophily means animals. If it is carried out by animals, it is zoophily, and if it is carried out by insects, it is entomophily, and if it carried out by bats, it is chiraptophily. If it is carried out by bats, it is chiraptophily. And if it is carried out by the slugs and the snails, it is malacophily. If it is carried out by the slugs and the snails, it is malacophily. So one more time I repeat, listen carefully. Anemophily by air or water. The characteristic feature is it should be lightweighted pollen grains. Hydrophily, water. Next is zoo by animals. Zoo means animals. Entomophily, entomo means insects. Next is chirapto by bats, and malacophily by slugs and snails. And the detailed explanation what is happening in this pollination, that we will see later in the next class. And also the post fertilization we'll see. Okay, and you have to remember the words monoecious, dioecious, unisexuality, bisexuality. What is unisexuality? What is bisexuality? What is monoecious? What is dioecious? Schistogamy, clistogamy, Hercogamy. All these things, definitions you have to write and practice. Okay, I defined one more time, listen carefully. What is pollen grain? Pollination. The transfer of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma is called as pollination. It might be direct as in gymnosperms or indirect as in angiosperms. Okay, and I have explained about the chasmogamy. Chasmo means open, the ovules are open. Clistogamy, closed pollination. And we have seen different types of pollination: self-pollination and cross-pollination. What is self-pollination? What are the features for the self-pollination? These things we have seen, and we also seen cross-pollination, types of cross-pollination. Okay, go through the video again and again, listen to the video, then you'll know the definitions. Thank you, children.